千里之行，始于足下。A journey of 1,000 miles begins beneath the feet. We now gather in the Tao to travel the journey together. Welcome to Tao Talks with Derek Lin, where we take a deep dive into the Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu. I would like to extend a warm welcome to you. Thank you for joining us. I would like to invite you to center your thoughts and direct your attention to this moment in time, to the here and now, to be fully present and mindfully aware as we all ready ourselves for this sacred process in the Tao with one another. Now, without further ado, let us continue with Tao Te Ching 26. The title of Tao Te Ching 26 is Heavy Supplies. As we discussed previously, this term originated from warfare in ancient China when it was important for an army on the march to bring its own essential supplies. Tao sages used it as the metaphor for the essential supplies in our journey through life, as we will explore in depth today. The chapter itself, Tao Te Ching 26, is relatively short, with 10 lines. And as usual, we did our sectional analysis to see where the divisions are. This chapter is divided into 3 parts: the beginning 2 lines, the ending 2 lines. They bookend or bracket the middle 6 lines. So the first 2 lines will be section 1. The middle 6 lines are section 2. And the last 2 lines will be section 3. The 6 lines in the middle are further divided into 3 subsections of 2 lines each, as you can see. Previously, we were able to examine the first 2 lines, and here is a quick recap on them. So, the first line, heaviness is the root of lightness. In our previous meeting, we explored the meaning of this. In this particular context, heaviness means being serious about life. It means someone who is solid, substantial, not easily moved. And the seriousness that this person brings is applicable to the cultivation of spirituality and virtues. Lightness is the opposite. It is a flippant attitude, taking nothing seriously and therefore unable to better oneself in any way. The difference can be easily seen in the way people react to the 2 different attitudes or approaches to life. Frivolous promise, not taken seriously. A promise that is made solemnly is taken seriously. It is trusted. And we can see this in the reaction that people have in a crisis situation. They look to someone who has substance, who has decisiveness, not someone who is nervous, lacking focus, doesn't know which way to go. So, based on all of this, it becomes apparent that heaviness will be more in line with the approach and attitude of the people who follow and practice the Tao. And we also covered line 2. This is where we ended our discussion last time. This is about the contrast between quietness and restlessness, similar to the contrast between heaviness and lightness. In the Tao, being quiet is a sign of internal strength, while being restless reveals internal weakness. And therefore, we can see how quietness is aligned with heaviness. It is steady. It is reliable. On the other hand, restlessness is aligned with lightness. It is unstable, and people quickly learn the restless person is simply not dependable. A lot of times we will hear a person of this kind of lightness described as flaky. That is, they may go off on a tangent of their own. They may not be around when they're needed. They may not show up when they say they would. You can't really count on them for anything. Overall, quietness has central importance in the Tao, so it is referenced multiple times in the Tao Te Ching. Here are a couple of examples. So the character Ching for quietness can be translated in several ways that are synonymous with one another. To be quiet, to be silent, to be still is to be tranquil. Therefore, it can be translated as quietness, silence, stillness, and tranquility. These all point to the same meaning in the Tao. This particular character that you see on the title is repeated 10 times throughout the Tao Te Ching in different chapters, and that signifies its importance. One example from Tao Te Ching 15 is as follows. In line 13, it says, "Who can be muddled yet desist? In stillness gradually become clear." So in the red highlight, you see the character corresponding to the translation, stillness. So this chapter 15 is talking about the crucial first step to attain quietness. When our minds are muddy, that is, filled with worries, anxieties, racing thoughts, emotional turmoil, perhaps external distractions, our natural inclination might be to frantically search for solutions, talk constantly, nonstop, or engage in ever more frantic activities. These would all be manifestations of lightness. The way to go from there to stillness is gradual. As these two lines illustrate, it is to allow the muddiness of the mind to settle down. Allow time for this process to take place. In Tao Te Ching 15, when it says desist, it means to put a stop to it. Stop the frantic activities. Stop the chase. Recognize the state of internal chaos and make a conscious decision to not feed it, to not make it even worse, to simply pause, take a breath, and stop all of that. This is followed by slowing down, allowing the chaos to dissipate on its own. And once the mind has settled, clarity prevails. This allows us to see situations, problems, and solutions with newfound transparency. Once the mind is free from constant noise and agitation, that is when it is able to function at its highest capacity. Insights will arise on their own. Decisions that you make are sound. Creativity can flow unimpeded. So, I have heard a story that talks about how this process works. Once upon a time, there was a man who went to the sage to complain about a dispute he was having with a family member. As he was speaking to the sage, he was furious, recalling the conflict in mind. So he asked the sage for help. He said, "Master, I know I am right. How can I win this argument?" The sage said, "I want you to go home. And for the next 3 months, do nothing about this issue. Say nothing about it. Take no actions. Come back after 3 months." So the man did exactly as he was instructed. He thanked the sage. He went home. He did and said nothing about the dispute. After 3 months, he returned to the sage, and the sage asked him, "So, did you win the argument?" The man said, "Master, the problem no longer seems as big as I thought it was." He said, "Master, I was still mad when I got home. But with every day that passed, the dispute, the issue, it seemed less and less urgent, less and less of a problem. After a while, I realized it was actually kind of petty. I realized I was getting all worked up over something that was not a big deal to begin with." The end. So, what worked for the man in the story can also work for us. If something has set us off, triggering extreme emotions, anger, perhaps rage, it is possible that it isn't the substance of the issue that is triggering, but actually the heat of the moment. By giving it some time, allowing the temperature to come down, things gradually become clear, and that can put us in a much, much better position to deal with it wisely. So that is what we can extract from 2 lines in Tao Te Ching 15. And there is another example in Tao Te Ching 16, where line 6 says, returning to the root is called tranquility. Line 7, tranquility is called returning to one's nature. This is the connection between tranquility and the root, the core of our being. And recalling that the heavy is the root of the light. The heavy is the unmovable foundation of the Tao. For you and me, returning to the root, it means to reconnect with the deepest, most essential self, the inherent, unconditioned nature that existed before the influence of the material world. Pressure from society, personal desires, clouded that initial untainted purity. So it is all about the shedding of those external layers to get back to what is truly fundamental. So being rooted, the heaviness is directly connected to the quietness of tranquility. When you have it, there is a deep sense of inner peace. It's a calm that forms a stable basis for engaging with the world. This in turn connects back to the concept of gravitas that we spoke of last time. And here in Tao Te Ching 16, it says returning to the root. Returning in this context also means going back to your true nature, your true destiny. In our original state, we have a natural preference for peace and quiet. Sometimes we forget this about ourselves because we are so immersed in the material world. But when we reconnect with tranquility, we can sense the truth and we can resonate with the truth. And that resonation brings this feeling of relief. Like, I have finally returned to myself. I am home. So when I talk about quietness having this central importance in the Tao, it's not just in the other chapters of the Tao Te Ching, it is also in other classics. Lao Tzu says, quietness is the master of restlessness. What about other sages, other writings on the Tao? Another classic, the Qing provides additional emphasis on this concept. Here is the passage to illustrate that. It says, if one can be constantly clear and tranquil, heaven and earth shall all return. The human spirit prefers clarity, but the mind disturbs it. The human mind prefers tranquility, but desires pull at it. So I set this translation next to the original ancient Chinese because it's a very literal translation. It conveys exactly what the original says. And it talks about the natural preference that we all have for clarity and tranquility. So what it says is that deep down, we all have this. We all prefer clarity and tranquility because we're not at our best when things are unclear, when it is noisy and confusing. So clarity, we all know what clarity is like. It is the feeling that you get when you learn something new. Suddenly, a concept becomes clear and it expands your mind. Or think about the time when you were able to solve a puzzle. There was a moment when everything fell into place. Sudden clarity. So we naturally wish to have this clarity, not just in terms of vision, what we see, but also thoughts, what we think. So tranquility is also a feeling we know. It's the relief when you transition from overwhelming noise to peace and quiet. Like coming home after the end of a busy working day. Like hearing this car alarm go off, or perhaps loud music that won't stop, finally getting turned off. There is that moment of relief. So we naturally wish to be at peace. And that's because there is a subtle joy in tranquility that we can connect with. So the world in which we live, it tends to pull us away from both clarity and tranquility. The world provides many distractions and temptations. And I say distractions are disruptive to the spirit. This is especially true when you have finally done the work on yourself, you have gained a good idea about your spiritual goals in life. You know what you are here in this world to accomplish. Distractions will take your attention away from that, away from the destination of your spiritual quest. It can cause you to veer off your path. And what about desires? Desires are disturbing to the mind. And I say that this is because we all know what it's like when we were beset with certain desires for something. Could be anything, could be material, it could be intangible, whatever that is, it verges on the obsessive. It becomes all we can think about all the time. So I certainly have memories of what that was like for me, and I think everybody does. So that is why I say it is disturbing to the mind. We need to transcend the distraction and the disturbance. To transcend beyond, in the language of the Tao, is to regain heaven and earth. Heaven and earth is everything, the world, the universe. And in the Tao, the way to go about gaining everything is to use our natural preferences to help us move closer to that which we prefer. So it means we have to mindfully direct our intention in order to minimize disturbance in our lives. With less disturbance, we increase the quietness, giving the mind a chance to calm down. And when we establish this calmness, our thoughts, perceptions begin to clear up. And this is how tranquility leads to clarity. Clarity in tranquil mind leads to connection to the Tao. In oneness with the Tao, we regain all that we have lost. And that is what it means to regain everything, heaven and earth. This translation and explanation comes from my book, The Tao of Tranquility, which focuses on this ancient classic, the Ching. It is available as paperback, ebook, as well as audiobook. And the last note about this is to recognize that it is not always easy for us. When we live our modern lives in the modern world, in modern times, it is not easy to spend time with ourselves, for ourselves, to get back to ourselves, to be in touch with the natural clarity and tranquility that we prefer. There is clarity and tranquility deep within. So what we have to do is to get in touch with it. So for those of us who feel they can use a little help in doing this, I have something that I want to offer. We all have many demands on us. They are constantly pulling us in different directions. At the same time, we still need to find a way to put the Tao into practice so the precious wisdom will not go to waste. To that end, I'm posting a Tao meme on a weekly basis, an example of which you see on the screen. And as you can see, it is a quote from the Tao Te Ching that we can use for contemplation, for meditation, or just something to keep in mind as we face the stress of daily challenges. When life becomes muddled, and when we find peace of mind to be elusive, we can always look at these words from Lao Tzu, draw strength from them. Just like the tree drawing nutrients from the soil. Or, as Lao Tzu says, he himself draws spiritual sustenance from the nourishing mother, another term for the Tao. The Tao is powerful in helping us settle the mind so we can regain tranquility. You can find these memes at Derek Lin Books on Facebook. And now I want to take a summary look at the concepts that we have talked about so far. Heaviness, lightness, root, and mastery. We can summarize these two lines with the column on the left, unaware of the Tao. It is basically people who personify lightness and restlessness. The kind of people in your life, the people you know, that you can't really trust them or rely on them. They go off, they do their own thing. They don't really think about other people. On the right side, we have aligned with the Tao. This is the kind of people who personify heaviness and quietness. These are the ones we respect and admire. Someone like that that you will call, I'm so grateful for that person's presence in my life. He or she is my rock. And therefore, we aspire to be more like them. So in comparing the different kinds of people, first, I want to address the way they think. For those who are unaware, they tend to be thoughtless. Their moods are fleeting. They can change from one moment to the next. And some people may call them mercurial. They are superficial in the concerns that they express about how things look instead of how things are. In contrast to that, those who are aligned with the Tao, instead of being thoughtless, they are thoughtful. What they say, what they do, it is all thought through ahead of time. Rather than fleeting moods, they possess mental stability. And rather than superficial concerns, they can provide insights. They can look beyond the surface and see the truth beneath. So, what are these two types of people like in person? The person with lightness, the person that is restless, you can see the fidgety agitation in them. What I mean is constant foot tapping, finger drumming. This is all reflecting an unsettled mind. If you are like that sometimes, then it can help to be aware that being fidgety means you cannot be fully present and therefore will lack the presence, will lack the feeling of significance no matter where you happen to be. And you can be seen as excessively eager, and the actions you take will be too impulsive, given to the spur of the moment. In contrast to that, the person who is aligned with the Tao will exude this dignity. They have a dignified presence. They are patient, whereas the person of lightness is overly eager. The person with gravitas understands the virtue of patience, is patient with other people and themselves. And rather than to take impulsive actions, they would take actions mindfully. And lastly, I want to comment on how the lives of these people play out. The person of lightness, a characteristic of those people would be their broken commitments. When they get into something, they are dabbling. They follow fads, which come and go. So they themselves change with the changing trends. When something is no longer popular, they turn their attention to something else. And they do this frequently. And the choices that they make follow the chaos of life. They themselves are chaotic. In contrast to that, the person who is aligned with the Tao, instead of broken commitments, they are seen as trustworthy, as possessing honor. When they decide to do something, they commit to it. They make a decision, they stick to it. They see things through. They dedicate themselves to the path that they have chosen. So the in-depth understanding that they attain becomes the opposite of faddish dabbling. And lastly, instead of chaos, they offer peace and harmony. The principled choices that they make based on foresight and the Tao lead to such a life of peaceful harmony. So because of all this, we can see the meaning of the lines from Lao Tzu. Heaviness is the root of lightness. Quietness is the master of restlessness. It is important for us to have the people of substance in our lives. They help keep the people who are insubstantial, who are trivializing everything, they keep them rooted and grounded. So next line, line 3. Therefore, the sages travel an entire day. To travel an entire day is the metaphor for going through one's life journey, to traverse an entire life. And as human beings, we're all on a life journey of our own. I would even say that whether someone knows about the Tao or not, everybody is moving toward life and death after being born. So in a sense, everybody is on a path, no matter what. The difference is that Tao sages and cultivators of the Tao utilize the Tao, follow the Tao in order to have the best possible journey. And that is because in the life journey, the Tao provides an overview as well as specific recommendations, like GPS for the road trip. So from the previous 2 lines about heaviness, lightness, quietness, restlessness, here's what we can see. Those who follow the Tao approach the journey with care, with a serious mindset, treating it as a serious matter. And this is one of the reasons why such a person has substance and a solid basis. This person is not about inconsequential fluff or putting up a false front, a facade. So not only do they approach the journey with serious intent, it is the same when they make their choices, choosing a path in life. It is always based on consideration of Tao principles, and here choosing a path is metaphoric for arriving at a major life decision. When we say you've come to a crossroads in life, you have to pick and choose which way to go. That decision can have far-reaching consequences in the future, and therefore it should never be made lightly. Next line, line 4. Without leaving the heavy supplies. So when we talked about the title, we refer to this as the term that came out of the supplies for an army, and how Tao sages, including Lao Tzu, use the term metaphorically pointing to the essentials of life. So for the army, the heavy supplies would be food rations, clothing, weapons, armor, and so on. Just as the army on the march required food, you require spiritual sustenance. So the meaning of the Tao as spiritual sustenance covers a number of topics. We spoke of tranquility and clarity. To have clarity on your self-nature, you realize you are part of the Tao and the Tao is a part of you. Second, the Tao provides guidance toward virtues, morality, and ethics. So this is the cultivation of that as part of your journey. And then the essence of being still, the heaviness, the foundation, to be grounded and centered. This is just like a responsible general leading the army would never stray far away from supplies. That would be foolish. That would give the enemy the opportunity to conduct a raid, which can cause the loss of the supplies. Just like the general never strays far away, the sage remain connected to the essential parts of their lives, which is to say they are rooted in stillness, centeredness, and the Tao itself. And this is all the time, even when they are actively engaging with the material world. Next slide. So still looking at the same line without leaving the heavy supplies, just as an army, the heavy supplies for the army is not just about the food, but also the things that the army needs to utilize, like tools and weapons, etc. The same is true for travelers in the journey of life. So it's not just spiritual sustenance. The definition of the heavy supplies for the life journey can also include things like the following. Number one, your unique talents and perspective. This is essential to you. They are the gifts that you bring to life. They are how you contribute to a group effort bigger than any one person. Number two, your aspirations, vision, or dream for the future. This is sort of the guiding principle that tells you which way you need to go in life. Number three, your core values, beliefs, and your philosophy. These are what define you as an individual. What kind of person are you? What do they say about the type of person that you are? What is your moral compass? What is your true north? And number four, family, friends, and loved ones. Simply the people you care about. These are also part of the essentials in life. Not necessarily the physical entities, but the connection you have forged with them. Lastly, your health and overall well-being. This covers physical, mental, and spiritual health, none of which can be taken for granted. So these are all the fundamentals near and dear to your heart And notice that financial assets are not included in the essentials because they are external to you. They are not internal. And I personally decided to put health at the bottom of this list, symbolizing its root in nature because it is the foundation that everything else is built upon. So when the sages keep the essentials in sight and never leave them, never stray away from them, that is to say, they never leave the Tao. They never leave their heavy supplies. In terms of everybody having unique talents and perspective, the sages contribute their own unique perspectives, talents, and skills to a group effort. They seek complementary synergism. And this is true for all of us as well. Nobody is good at everything. Everybody is good at something. And that is why we join forces. And when we work together in a spirit of harmony, we become unstoppable as a group. Number 2, about vision, aspiration, goals for the future. The sages keep themselves on the path and on track toward their destination. People may stray from the path, seeking shortcuts. The sages understand the importance of consistent, sustained effort over time. It's just putting one step in front of the other and keep on repeating that. Number 3, about core values and beliefs. The sages will adhere to a code of honor and will not compromise its integrity. They go with the natural flow of events without compromising their principles. They remain within the guardrails of reason and honor. Number 4, speaking of loved ones, they spend quality time with family, friends, and loved ones. Sages understand this won't happen by itself. They have to make time for this. They have to be available. They have to make themselves available for their loved ones. And the same is true for us. Number 5 is about health, well-being. So the sages pay attention to that. The importance of this can be seen in the observation that when you are healthy, you have 100 concerns. But when you are not healthy, you have only one concern, and that is to regain your health. In order to attain overall well-being, the sages themselves have physical discipline. In ancient times, this might be Qigong or Taiji. In modern times, you and I have many more options. The purpose of engaging in helpful practices is not to live longer than nature intended, but to utilize the full value of a lifetime and not let it go to waste. So looking at this list, we can see that it is the intangibles that are truly valued. And the intangibles are things like integrity, obligation, duty. These are valued by the sages much more highly than material things. Each and every one of these contribute to the overall goal of Tao cultivation. And that ensures a good journey moving forward on the path. The sages would never leave their heavy supplies. In the same way, it is imperative for you and I to keep the essentials of life always in sight, always close to us. We're going to line 5. Even though there are luxurious sights, that is the translation. I want to break it down first by looking at the last 2 characters. So these 2 characters literally translate as glorious and sight. Glorious sight is the literal meaning, and the meaning is extended to mean luxurious sights. And this is because the sight of a grand palace is generalized to the sight of attractive luxuries as a whole. This particular expression is no longer used in modern Mandarin. This is an ancient expression. In this context, it is a metaphor for the distraction of luxuries. It also means the enjoyment of good things in life. And we know from experience, there's not a real clear distinction, no clear lines separating the good things in life to enjoy and the distraction of luxuries. What we can say is that there are people who will be tempted by distractions to stray off the path. That is, they can enjoy the good things in life too much and lose sight of what is essential to them. To cultivate the Tao, on the other hand, it means we're able to enjoy the good things without losing ourselves, without straying from the path, without getting lost, without losing sight of the heavy supplies, the essentials. So, looking at the entire line. So let's keep in mind that the sages are human beings like everyone else. They too come across distractions. They too see the luxurious sights. Now, unlike people who are not aware of the Tao, the sages understand the negative side of distractions. Some are traps for the unwary. Some are illusions that fade away when you get closer. Some are transient, cannot last. Even if they turn out not to be illusory, they are not permanent. They don't last. They lack lasting reality. Some are sensory stimulation that can make you numb and jaded. So this covers a lot of ground. We can see how certain things become addictive or possibly are bottomless time sinks where you can waste away too much of life. And this is where we must also note the Tao as spirituality, as spiritual philosophy. It is not about denying the natural enjoyment of life. It is an advocate for the carefree wandering, as Zhuangzi would say, because life is meant to be enjoyable. So when it comes to the delights of prosperity, of abundance. Tao sages and cultivators apply the virtue of moderation. This is not to limit the goodness. Rather, the intent is to maximize. When you are moderate in your enjoyment, you can continue that enjoyment for much longer. When you overindulge, become numb or jaded, you shorten, you lessen the enjoyment. So this is avoidance of the traps of overstimulation. It is enjoying life while keeping the heavy supplies close at hand in order to remain grounded to what is real and what is truly important. Next line, line 6. They are composed and transcend beyond. They are reference to the sages. So I want to look at the first character there. This character literally means the swallow, which is a kind of bird. But here, it is not being used in that context. In this context, it means a mindset of calm composure, nothing to do with the bird. But because it is the same character as the bird, it has been interpreted to connect the two. This interpretation comes from the image of the swallow resting in its nest. So the primary meaning is not about the bird, but the state of mind. To be at ease and undisturbed, to be peaceful and tranquil. So then the interpretational image evokes that, the feeling of composure, the feeling of being secure against distractions. Thus, the sages, they reside in the Tao. They feel at ease and secure in it. And that is an example for us to follow. So looking at the entire line, they are composed and transcend beyond. As we had discussed, the heavy supplies, never leaving that, always keeping that in sight, meaning the sages always keep the important things in mind, and therefore they have the proper perspective on the non-essentials. The non-essentials are the nice to have, not the must have. So they enjoy the good things in life, just like you and me, but they know the good things in life are not the essentials. They're not part of the heavy supplies. So they can enjoy themselves without being lured from the path, without being distracted to that extent. And that is how they enjoy themselves with confidence that comes from their composure. They don't have this need to struggle against desires or eliminate the desires. They transcend the desires. And they can do so simply by recalling to mind the mission in life. So this will be their sacred quest. Everybody has a mission in life. You have your own sacred quest, which you may already know about, or you are still exploring your options. Either way, it is what matters most to you. So the distractions, the luxurious sights, no matter how attractive they may seem, the temptations cannot compare to your life purpose, what you are in this world to do. So there's no need to suppress desires, deny desires. You can simply transcend by reminding yourself of what is most essential to you. Therefore, the sages reside in the Tao like the swallow, comfortable in the nest. This captures the essence of a grounded mindset and inner tranquility. And this is why the good things in life, the luxuries, the glorious sights, the distractions, they don't have power over the sages. To be internally settled, unperturbed, like the bird resting in its nest. Next line. Line 7. How can the lords of 10,000 chariots? Let's break this down first by looking at the 10,000 chariots. So by now, we know this is also not literal. This is metaphorical. The 10,000 chariots represent complexity, represent many things to be managed. And we know from experience that when there are many, many things to manage, it becomes increasingly difficult, if not impossible, to take care of absolutely everything. This can be the complexity of people, resources, tasks, projects. And when things get complicated, you look at a problem to be solved, it can definitely happen that when you solve that one problem, you cause additional problems. You satisfy the demands from one part of the project only to become aware of dissatisfaction from another side of the project. So there are no perfect solutions. And now let's take a look at the expression, the lords of the 10,000 chariots. To be the lord of 10,000 chariots is to take on a huge responsibility. So things are not just complex, but they take on a crushing level of complexity. There are many demands on your time and attention being pulled in many different directions. So now we'll look at the entire line. And there are several ways that this metaphor can apply at the level of the ruler. A king or emperor has the ultimate responsibility for the protection and security of the kingdom or empire. That ruler is responsible for everything within his or her domain. For the ancient ruler, it is also the livelihood and well-being of all the subjects, all the affairs of the state, all the laws and rules governing the states, all the interactions with other kingdoms, whether it be wars or diplomacy. And at another level, we started with the metaphor of supplies for the military. So we can see the general as being the lord of the 10,000 chariots. That general is responsible for all the soldiers of the military. plus the supplies. And the ruler and the general, they can be abstracted to the concept of leadership. You can simply be a leader, not necessarily for a kingdom or empire or a military force, but perhaps an organization or maybe even a division within an organization. So regardless of the case, it is the responsibility. And even a small division, even just a team within a larger overall organization can have complexities of its own. You can, for instance, be a small department that's taking a highly multifaceted project lasting many years. And closer to home, this doesn't have to be a ruler, a general, a leader in an organization. Could simply be the head of a household. That's responsibility for the family, and there are complexities there as well. And what if someone says, I'm not a king, not an emperor, not a general, I'm not a leader in a business, and I'm just on my own. I'm just myself. Well, even that person, if that person is you, well, you have to stay on top of the many demands of modern living. So, in a way, you are ruling the kingdom that is your life no matter what. Next line. Apply themselves lightly to the world. So this is connected to the previous line. It is asking the question, how can the lords of 10,000 chariots apply themselves lightly to the world? So from the beginning of this chapter, we talked about the contrast of heaviness and lightness. So now we see Lao Tzu is basically saying the rulers, those who are responsible for many, it is a responsibility to be taken seriously, cannot be treated lightly. And when you zoom back in on yourself, your life, the kingdom that is your world, it is the same. You cannot regard your destination lightly. So we know from the metaphor, what Lao Tzu is trying to convey is that the impact of managing such complexity, the 10,000 chariots, it can be overwhelming. It is certainly widespread. That is to say, it can be affecting many people. Your decisions in life can affect many other people. Now, we can see this can be true for someone who is perhaps the business leader in a large organization. What is not as well understood is that even if you are not in that role, just because the web of life keeps you connected to so many people in everyday living, the decisions you make can affect many others as well. It is something to think about because this is why we say it is a serious matter deserving of serious intent, a serious attitude and a serious approach. And please note, this does not mean when we talk about heaviness, we're not talking about a lack of humor. Someone who prefers a humorous approach may say, why so serious? In the Tao, the sages and cultivators have the serious intent, but also a sense of humor, a sense of fun, because, as we said, carefree wandering is talking about how life should be enjoyed. So, what the first line of this chapter talks about is that lightness is built on top of heaviness. The way that Lao Tzu framed it was that heaviness is the root of lightness, and we can flip that around to say the lightness of humor must be built on a solid foundation of Tao cultivation. It is because you know the foundational issues are taken care of that is the very reason that you feel naturally lighthearted, because you are secure in the knowledge that you are on the right path and you are keeping your heavy supplies in view at all times. So I wanted to bring this up because it is a possible misinterpretation. In the West, sometimes people associate being serious with a joyless kind of grimness. For us, I want to remind everyone, a tree has roots as well as branches and leaves. The roots represent the foundation in the Tao. The branches and leaves are the ways we interact with the world, which can definitely be humorous. It can be lighthearted, but it's all connected to the roots. Next line. It says to be light is to lose one's root. So this line links back to the first line to emphasize the heavy over the light. And this is basically Lao Tzu asking the question, what if you are without your roots? What if you've been uprooted, so you are just drifting? So as before, heavy in this context is about the mature, deliberate, and focused. And also as before, light is the opposite, the frivolous, unserious, and inattentive, not paying attention. In that context, to be light is to lose one's root or spiritual foundation. Without this foundation, you can be easily swayed by the superficial. Therefore, we can already see that for those who follow the Tao, it has to always go from the root to the trunk, then the branches and the leaves. If the leaves are on their own, they've been taken off the branch and they are just floating and drifting in the wind. To see the connection between this line and the first line, I want to show the connection visually. So line 9 says to be light is to lose one's root. Referencing back to line 1, heaviness is the root of lightness. And in the same way, we are now looking at the last line. To be restless is to lose one's mastery. It also links back, but not to the first line, to the second line. It is the emphasis of the quiet over the restless. Just like the heavy has mastery over the light. To be restless is to lose mastery over oneself. It can also be to lose your control of a situation. Or it can be both. Losing mastery over yourself, losing control of a situation at the same time. So together, when we look at the last two lines, they provide a blueprint to live in the Tao. It says everything we do should be based on the Tao itself as our solid foundation. It is the root of our existence. All the actions based on it are intentional and mindful. And the other part of the blueprint is that everything we say should be thought through and measured. This is a description of the quiet person who has a quiet strength within. This strength is steady and stable without nervous agitation. It communicates with fewer words, but carry greater weight. This is to recognize that real impact comes not from frantic activities, but from a minimal but effective touch. So here is how it looks. Last line, to be restless is to lose one's mastery, links back to the second line, which says quietness is the master of restlessness. So this is how the correspondence looks for the last line. Now, is it possible for us to connect all of these concepts together? The answer is yes. So again, root and mastery, we can look at it in a graphical way so that we can see the entire thing. It is all about the Tao. And on the left, we use the tree metaphor, like before, to represent the dichotomy of lightness and heaviness. In this metaphor, the above ground level represents lightness, as you can see, the realm of movements, activities, and changes. The underground in this dichotomy represents heaviness, the realm of solidity, stability, foundational strength. And that's why we say heaviness is the root of lightness. So the lightness, in terms of branches and leaves, grow from the roots and the trunk. So we can say heaviness gives rise to lightness. And if we're using construction instead of a tree as our metaphor, then we can say lightness is the additional higher levels built on top of heaviness, which is the solid foundation. And with that metaphor, we automatically know the foundation must be laid before you can build anything on top of it. Just like the root has to be present in order for the tree to grow. On the right, we can use water to represent the restless versus the quiet. So we have restless, the restlessness on top. The surface of the water is choppy, it represents mental agitation, nervous, a restless state. Below the surface, there is the quiet of the depth. The deeper you go, the quieter and clearer it gets. And therefore, Lao Tzu says, the quietness is the master of the restlessness. So when we look at the top half of this image, it represents life in the material world, and that is the mindset where most people dwell. So I'll use that symbol to represent them. And we know that this is the world of sights and sounds, distractions and temptations, activities and excitement. And sometimes people forget that the branches and leaves must trace their origin back to the root. If they lose the root in the sense of forgetting the Tao, the basis of their existence, then they feel adrift. There is an emptiness in losing sight of the trunk that connects them to the origin of their essential nature. To the right, we have the disturbance, the splashes and ripples to symbolize an agitated state of mind. So, this is all about what Lao Tzu calls the five sounds, which is simply the noisiness of the material world. Initially, that noise attracts attention, but as it continues on, it increasingly becomes exhausting. Eventually, you want a break from it. Too much auditory stimulation. You just want a moment of quiet for yourself. So, looking from the left to the right, we see that the excitement, activity, the novelty of the world above ground leads to increasing fatigue. The feeling of the void, this inner satisfaction. The agitated mind says, is this all there is to life? Outwardly, what they may say is that they feel lost. They feel like they know they no longer have a sense of direction about life. They are seeking purpose and meaning, not having a whole lot of success in finding either one. They may say, I'm just spinning my wheels, or I'm going nowhere, or I'm just going around in circles. That is the cue for us to focus on the bottom half of this image, represented by the sage. The sage resides in this world of substance, solidity, and depth. To the left, the root system of the tree, symbolizing the Tao taking roots deep in the mind and in the heart, a deeply rooted spiritual foundation that we're talking about. To the right, it is the depth of water, the state of quiet clarity, and that represents the mind of the sage. It is what happens when agitation has calmed down, and this is when you say, at last, finally, I can hear myself think. That is when your mind can establish and amplify your connection to the Tao. It's like tuning in to a powerful signal of a radio station. So then what's coming through will be crystal clear and free of distortions. So the left, the roots grounded, practical, offering stability, steadiness. It is reliable and dependable. And the Tao is the nourishing mother, like the rich soil providing nutrients to the tree. From the left to the right, the depths representing deep understanding, clarity of perception, clarity of mind. And this is manifesting as measured communication. Not saying too much, but what you say is rich with meaning. So as we have already discussed, what Lao Tzu calls heaviness is the foundation. And if you are lacking of resolve in this area of life, that is when you become easily distracted. You jump from one thing to another, never settling down with anything, and you will lose the roots, lose the foundation or the basis. By putting this image together, it becomes easy to grasp. And also, as we have discussed, the quietness is the stillness of the Tao. If you're not able to quiet down because the mind is too restless, then it is inevitable that you will lose mastery. And this is why we have a cautionary note. That is really the central message from Lao Tzu, encapsulated in the last two lines. To be light is to lose one's root. To be restless is to lose one's mastery. We are now past the top of the hour, so we need to bring this presentation to a close. Let's go to the summary. So we've gone through a lot today. We talked about the heavy supplies as the essentials of life. And we talked about being rooted in the Tao using the tree metaphor. And this is about establishing the Tao as your foundation. It is also about letting your actions and words be sourced in the foundation you have built. From there, it is about exploring clarity and tranquility. Then the question is, are you experiencing the disturbance of ripples from time to time? I know the answer is yes for many of us. The next question is, how will you let them settle and return to stillness? Well, this is the reason why we cultivate the Tao and we come together in a meeting like this to discuss the Tao. Lastly, the heavy supplies for your journey. Just as a reminder, the sages never leave their heavy supplies. We have to do the same. Think about what matters most and keep those things close to you. And today we also talked about the 10,000 chariots. You are the Lord of the 10,000 chariots. You must accept your responsibility. That is, you have to take command of the chariots. They are waiting for your order. And this is thinking about the essential people in your life, because mastering your connection and relationship with them presents its own complexities. You have to take care of them as one of your primary duties. We talked about how the Lord of the 10,000 chariots, the decisions that he or she makes will affect many people. The same is true of every decision you make. And this is why Lao Tzu provides a caution against frivolity, being frivolous. Managing the chariots must be done with focus and thoughtful intent. And this is also why Lao Tzu cautions us against being restless. And that's because mental agitation leads to mistakes. We have to let calmness prevail over chaos. That is our task. So that is the summary for Dao De Jing 26. Share the Tao. The easiest way to access Tao resources is to visit my author website, DerekLin.com. There, you can click on links and go to the webpage where you will find everything listed, such as Taoism.net with information about the Tao and also about this meeting. Our Facebook community where you can ask questions or discuss your thoughts on the Tao with others. Our YouTube channel where you can watch recordings of all our previous meetings. My Amazon author page where you can find books and audiobooks for your continuing exploration. You can also go directly with the web address dereklin.com/links, as you can see. You can use these resources to share the Tao with the people you know who may be interested. When you see the benefits of Tao cultivation in your life, you can share your experience with others through your comments in Facebook or YouTube. If you find my books or audiobooks to be helpful, you can post your reviews on Amazon to help others discover the Tao. This is the path that I am on. So I can say sharing the Tao has benefited me personally in every aspect of life. I would like to invite you to come along with me to share the Tao. Let us travel together on the path in the journey of life. Our meeting has come to an end, but the journey continues on. Until next time, may the Tao fill you with peace and happiness.